Hey, I'm ZSH Plays. Welcome back to Jurassic World Northwest, where this week we are building 2 new aviaries using all the new features in the Rebirth expansion. We're going to be building a huge mixed aviary called Cretaceous Skies, which I've been planning for a long time, but before we do that, we're going to build our first ever aquatic aviary in our Cretaceous cruise. And that means we need to do what might be the last bit of research we ever need to do in this park, which is the Hyperloop, so that we can get staff out onto the little island where the aviary is going to be. And here it is. As I'm sure you're all more than aware of by now, in the new update we can run Cretaceous cruises through aviaries at last. So I wanted to add an aviary into our Cretaceous cruise. This is the second time we've come back to improve this. It's getting more and more animals in it, and I'm very happy to do that. What I wanted to do was to see if we could build a really small aviary that was almost like a little desert island in the middle of the lake for one of the cutest and probably hardest to pronounce animals in the game, Tapejara, if indeed that is how you pronounce it. So we've got the Cretaceous cruise running through the aviary. We'll get a little beach in there, in and amongst the water with some trees. We'll use the sand terrain paint to get a beach in, use various different terrain brushes to get some nice looking trees and bamboo in there to give it a slightly tropical vibe. Add in a fish feeder, and then we're going to extend the land out behind the aviary so we can get the hatchery in and a little hyperloop, just so that we can have this aviary part of our standard mode park here without having to run a path through the lake, because we don't want that. With a hyperloop in on the island, we'll go back to one of our staff centres and put in one of the new Rebirth-themed in-gen hyperloop stations. Really like this building, and I think it fits in really nicely with everything else that we've got going on in here. So we'll slot that in next to our MVU, and then we'll just run this Hyperloop system. This is purely to get the park working. This isn't something the guests would use or anything like that. We'll just run it all the way through to this Hyperloop here, and now we can use the hatchery without any paths. Then we'll get rid of as much of the land as we can and get our helicopters off to do some research, because we've got 3 new species to add into the park today. More on the other 2 later. Let's get back to the aviary. We'll use our usual conifers and pines to start covering up these buildings and making sure this isn't an eyesore in the middle of the lake. And we're also going to use some of the new pieces as well. We got some brand new foliage, this grass, which is really nice and a lot smaller than the buffalo grass that we already had. So we'll start with this, place this around, and we'll use a few clumps of the buffalo grass around the outside as well. Get that looking natural, and then we can start making the inside look a bit more tropical. So we got some palms here and some tree ferns. All these kind of plants are ones you can easily grow in temperate climates like the Pacific Northwest. You don't have to be in the tropics to have pines and things like that. And then we're going to make a little custom tree with one of the new perch points on it. This is the perch point. We'll get this nicely positioned on this broken tree here. Maybe have a couple of them. We'll use some brackets to attach those onto the tree trunk as well, just to make it look like it would support the weight of these animals, although they wouldn't be very heavy, being flyers. We're going to do something a bit more advanced than this with the perch points in the huge aviary that we're going to build in a minute, but I just want something nice and simple here to make sure that the Tapejara are nice and visible to our guests in their kayaks. And that is everything we need to do for our little Cretaceous cruise aviary. Time to get the animals in. Here they are. They are so cute. I've coloured them to kind of look like parrots. That's the concept here. A very vivid green, and then a big red crest for the male as well. They are the smallest flying reptiles in the game, and I think they suit this little mini aviary perfectly. Let's see how our Cretaceous cruise gets on. Love this shot here of the kayak coming into the aviary and the doors opening. It's so cool. And there's our perch point working very nicely for our male Tapejara. And this is the new view from the Lost World restaurant. Right, time for the Cretaceous Skies. The next new feature we're going to be using is the ability to dig down much deeper in aviaries than we could before. We're exploring that on a little testing map here. We can get it down to 12 meters. So let's head back to Jurassic World Northwest and put that into practice. The Cretaceous Skies exhibit will sit in between the T-Rex habitat that you can see here, the tropical house in the background, and in with the raptors in the foreground. And it's going to be pretty sizable. We're going to be using 6 of the aviary domes joined together. So we'll place those down here. And then we'll draw around them with some sand so that we can delete them and start working out exactly how big it's going to be and what we're going to do with it. There we go. So the concept for this aviary is that we're going to be building a canyon, a really big canyon, using all the new rocks from the new update, which I absolutely love. Only used a couple of them in the Lost Valley build that we did a few days ago, so we're going to be using all of them today. And I want the canyon to be really tall, and this new ability to dig way, way down in the aviaries increases their volume so much. I feel like for the first time ever in these games, we can build an aviary for the Quetzalcoatlus that actually looks like a suitable enclosure for them. We're using the Malta aviary domes because I think that rusted metal is going to go really nicely with the canyon rocks, provide a brilliant background for our Quetzalcoatlus, along with the Tapejara. The way it's going to work is we'll build a massive canyon through the aviary, and that would extend onto the outside walls of the aviary as well for theming purposes. And then we're going to have 3 viewing galleries for the guests. One of them is going to be on the floor at the bottom of the canyon, so they can sort of gaze upwards into the skies with the huge Quetzalcoatlus flying over them. One of them will be at the other end of the aviary, where there'll be a little area specifically for the Tapejara to hang out in, with a lot more vegetation and a little pond and things like that. And how big does it look in here now that we've dug down? And then as the guests walk round the aviary, the path will continually get higher until at the end of the aviary, they're going to be standing right on top of the canyon at eye level with the Quetzalcoatlus and looking down into the rest of it. If we can get it to work, it's going to be really cool and something we've never been able to build in the Jurassic games before. So let's get on with it. I'm just joining the aviary up with all the other areas of the park that we've got here, and then we'll get inside and start building it. So we're going to take this little bit of terrain here in front of the top viewing gallery and start sculpting this into the canyon, and then we're going to use some of the amazing new rocks. Love the texture on these with the kind of dark, almost black bits alongside the standard kind of tropical brown. We're going to use a few different rocks to create a kind of showpiece piece of rock here that's going to have a higher bit on it, where we're going to hide a perch point so that the Quetzalcoatlus will actually sit up here. There we go. And then we will continue this technique around the rest of the walls. These rocks are so big, rather than just making one lump of rock and then copying that around, we're going to use lots of different rocks all the way around the canyon to make sure it's got a really varied look, because that's lots easier when the rocks are as big as this. So we put this rock in here as well, make sure it's covering up the terrain. And then we'll start using mainly this rock around the rest of this part of the cliff. And we'll mix in other rocks as well, just to break up the textures, make sure the rock work is really varied and looks really good. Now, I mentioned earlier that we might just have done the last bit of research we need to do in this park, and the reason for that is that Jurassic World Northwest is pretty much finished. We have just one more habitat to build here, which is at the start of the Cretaceous area. And with it being the last habitat, I thought it would be fun to do something I think we've only ever done once before on the channel. Get you guys to choose which dinosaur or otherwise that we put in there. By the time you finish watching this, there'll be a poll on the community tab on the channel. I think 5 is the most things you can put in a poll. It might be more than that. I'll use the maximum. I'm going to go through my list of all the Cretaceous species that I'm considering for this park, and I'll put as many of them in the poll as possible. And whichever one you guys vote for will be the animal that we use for the final habitats in the park. I look forward to seeing which animal you guys choose. This aviary is starting to look good. I think we could just do with a bit more height on those walls. So let's get the canyon even taller. We'll scale these rocks up and concentrate on this end of the aviary for the maximum height, making sure we don't obscure the view from the top viewing gallery. And there we go. That looks better. Onto the little Tapejara area. So we've got a kind of a pond here, and we're going to fill this in with some bamboo forest and a few other terrain brushes and start to get a bit of a lusher area here where they will hang out. And then for the rest of the aviary, we're going to give it a much more deserty kind of canyon feel. We'll fill in a load of sand around the water, and then we'll use the arid grassland to join the rocks onto the sand to get a nice kind of graduation there. We'll get some sand in the water as well, and then we'll start placing loads of the dead trees and tree stumps and things like that all around it, just to make it look a bit more interesting. We'll have some in the water, loads around the water, and then a few more hot climate pine trees as well, like the ponderosa pine, and then just a few bushes here and there, just to add a splash of green to it. I forgot the hatchery, so we'll place that in up here. Nice and out of the way, and it will be completely obscured by trees from ground level, so that's not going to spoil the view. We'll make another one of our simple little perches here, but we'll make this one a lot more substantial, so it can take the weight of the Quetzalcoatlus. And then we're going to do something which I was hoping would work, but which didn't, which is use loads of small perch points around the Tapejara area. I was hoping that these were programmed in such a way that the large flying reptiles would only use the large perch points and the small ones would only use the small perch points. Unfortunately, the small ones use both the large and the small. Personally, I think it'd be great if the large ones were exclusively for the large flyers, because what I wanted to do was exclusively use small perch points around the little pond, so that the Tapejara spent most of their time there, and then exclusively used large perch points around the top viewing gallery so that Quetzalcoatlus spent most of their time there. But once we get the flying reptiles in, you'll see that the small flyers can use both of them, so you can't really use them to separate them out into different territories, which is a bit of a shame. But believe me, it looks really good when it's done anyway. I'm so happy with this when it's finished. I'm just adding some of the new pipe pieces here so the water's got somewhere to come from. And then we're going to add in a nest for the Tapejara. I'm not going to have a large nest for the Quetzalcoatlus. We're going to have 2 of them in here, and to be honest, I think that's more than enough, even in an aviary of this size. But I do want the Tapejara to breed, so we'll place a nest in on some raised terrain so it's up and amongst the rocks, and then we'll put some more rocks in just to sort out the new terrain that creates. I also thought it'd be fun to make a kind of custom tree, a really gnarly dead tree, like the kind you might see in the Grand Canyon or something. So I'm combining about 12 different trees here and some bushes and stuff, just to get something a bit more unique looking than what we've got in the game. Kind of like a specimen tree, even though it's dead. And we'll have a few of these around, like one up on this cliff here where the Quetzalcoatlus is hopefully going to settle. And that's the interior of the aviary done, and we can move on to the outside. The first thing we're going to do is extend the cliff motif to the outside of the aviary as well, so it has that canyon feel even before we get into it. I'm going to extend those down to this viewing gallery here, which we will customize in a minute. And if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to hit the like button and make sure you've subscribed if you're new to the channel. Let's get on to the sign. We love a big sign in this park. Really enjoyed the One Long Valley sign and the Jurassic Seas one from the last episode, so we're going to do a Cretaceous Skies one here. Keep it pretty simple, but we're just going to use the eye to create a kind of line next to the word skies, so it's got a bit of a look of a kind of aviator badge kind of thing. And then we will do the same trick that we did with the Jurassic Seas to get a two-tone effect on the letters, with the white at the top representing the sky and the brown at the bottom representing the canyon. And rather than putting this on the aviary itself, we're going to have this over the path that leads up to it to kind of announce that the aviary is there. So we're going to build an archway out of the new rebirth-themed rocks. We'll just get one pillar of the arch looking good, and then we can just spin it around and use it again on the other side. We will again use the Pteranodon statues because there are no statues for any other flying reptiles in the game, so they will have to do. Although I am going to customize these ones a little bit this time. There's a really nice rock pillar, a very thin rock pillar in the Rebirth expansion, so we're going to use that to replace the bamboo, just so they fit in nicely with theming. And once we've got the arch and those done, we're going to do something we've never been able to do before, which is turn some lights on in the daytime. Blew my mind that that wasn't in the game when it launched, but so happy it is finally there now, because we can get some nice lighting on the Pteranodon statues along with the torches that we place on the sign. And then we'll move on to the viewing galleries. I love these new light window panels from the Rebirth expansion, so we're going to be using these along with some of the new stone walls. I want a fairly subtle building that fits nicely into the canyon walls behind it, with some fairly generic design on it, and I think stone and some slightly kind of postmodern windows will do a nice job. We'll add some more details on there, get some buttresses in the sides so that it's got a more interesting shape. We don't want anything too fancy. The big sign at the start that we just built is kind of the main part of the theming. Want this to be fairly subtle. Can't resist adding some of the new dense moss decals and more lights to it again now that we can have them turned on. And there we go. That's the viewing galleries, and that is Cretaceous Skies. It's time to add the flying reptiles. We're going to get the Tapejara settled in first. Here they are. I've gone with the red for these ones to differentiate them from the Kawajara. And there is so much space in here as they fly away. Such a difference from the little aviary that we built towards the beginning of this series. I've started with just the 3 of them in here, but they will be breeding very soon, I'm sure. Here's one of them using the little fish feeder right in front of one of the viewing galleries in their little area. But with my plan for the small perch points not working, here's one of them happily landing on the large one that I had reserved for the Quetzalcoatlus. And speaking of them, here they are. It is so good to finally have one of these in an aviary. Never used them in JWE3. I used them once in JWE2, and to be honest, it kind of looked ridiculous. They look amazing, especially when they're striding about now that they can walk on the floor as well. Such amazing animals. Tapejara have discovered their nest. Now we have some little babies. They are super cute. And it's time to let the guests in. Here's what the entrance looks like, with the Quetzal soaring past in the background. And the views from the various viewing galleries down on the ground. I think the views from both of them are suitably atmospheric. And this is what it's all about. the Quetzalcoatlus landing on this big rock in front of the high viewing gallery. That was the main thing I wanted to achieve in this build, and I'm very happy that we did. And there we go, that's the Cretaceous skies. Thank you so much for watching as always. Make sure you check the poll on the channel now so you can help determine which Cretaceous dinosaur is going to make it into the park. And I'll see you next time for another Jurassic World Northwest.